you suffer with knee pain and perhaps movements like this seem just impossible? Well, then this is the video for you. Our knees are responsible for 90% of sporting injuries, and that is because they are the least anatomically stable joint in the body. To make our knees stronger and more resilient, it's really important we exercise, and I'm going to show you the 4 best exercises you can do to increase your knee strength and stability. The first exercise we're going to do is called the Poliquin Step-Up, and it was invented by this guy. He noticed that most of knee pain and injuries were caused by a weak VMO muscle, the vastus medialis oblique. It's one of the quad muscles and it's situated here. It's a teardrop-shaped muscle which helps stabilize the knee. It controls how the patella, the kneecap, moves in relation to the rest of the knee. Now, for a Poliquin Step-Up exercise, ideally you'd use a slant board which looks like this. But don't worry, I don't have one either. But you can use a yoga block or an exercise block. So with your exercise block, just place it on the floor. Now you can do this in trainers if you don't feel stable enough barefoot. Placing the heel onto the yoga block, make sure your toes are firmly down onto the floor if you're barefoot. Keeping this knee just slightly bent and the other leg is straight, you're going to drill the heel down towards the floor and then come back up. Now this movement really targets that VMO muscle, and you're going to work with 3 sets of 10 just like that. And don't forget to do both sides. Our second exercise is about stretching out the quads. Now research has shown that the majority of knee pain is actually caused by tight quads. Tight quads can affect the tendon that connects the quads to the shin, and this can actually cause misalignment of the kneecap, the patella, and that ultimately changes the way force travels through the knee, which can cause pain. For our quad stretch, you may want to grab yourself a yoga strap. If you haven't got a strap, you can actually use a rolled up towel for this one. So you're going to lie down on your stomach and just come up onto the forearms. Make sure you're comfortable here before we begin. Just wrap the strap around the foot or your towel, and then you're going to pull your leg all the way in until you're feeling that stretch. It may be it's just a little way down before you feel the intensity of the stretch, or some of you may feel you can comfortably get the heel all the way down. Work with your body with this. It may be that as you go through the rounds, you can deepen that stretch. Avoid lowering the chest because you'll lose the intensity of the stretch. Stay on the forearms, stay nice and neutral, and draw that leg in. Hold for 5 breaths, and you're going to repeat that 10 times on both sides. A lot of pain happens in our knees when we take them into flexion, meaning the more we bend them, the more they hurt. So it makes sense that we actually work on our hamstrings next, because the hamstrings are the primary muscles we use when we take the knees into flexion. And it makes sense that we work on the muscles surrounding the whole knee for overall knee health and stability. For our hamstring stretch, we're going to come into a good old forward fold, but make sure we do it properly. You're going to start with your knees bent, take them at least hip distance apart, and I want you to just lift your toes like this. Slide the hands down the shins towards the ankles until your belly and thighs meet, closing down that gap. Take some deep breaths. If this feels comfortable, you can slowly edge away, keeping that connection with belly and thighs until you start to really feel the intensity of the stretch on the hamstrings. Once you're at your limit here, keep the neck loose, hold for 5 deep breaths, and you're going to repeat that 10 times. Now, our last exercise may surprise you, but we're going to actually work on our hip mobility. I know what you're thinking, what has that got to do with our hips? But actually, if we have good hip mobility, it stops that stress traveling down to our knees, the least anatomically stable joint in the body, in the first place. And the best way to work with our hip mobility is a variation of pigeon pose. Now, you may want a block for this if your hips are particularly tight. I'll show you both versions. This is what it looks like, a bit like the start of windscreen wipers, where you come into one leg in a pigeon shape and the other leg behind you. Now, if this hip is really high up, and it's just not working out for you, your hips are quite tight and you may want to grab yourself a block. Just sit on the block. If you haven't got a block, use a book and just give yourself a little bit more space. Make sure you're able to straighten back. Give yourself some time and allow the knees to drop down in their own time. Hold for 5 breaths, repeat, and you're going to do that 5 times on both sides. So there you go, my 4 best exercises to really target the knee, build stability, build strength, and build resilience.